What? Do you not like difficult games? Well, guess what? The only other option you have is to get good. Because do harder games make games fun? Because difficulty can be subjective because you normally just get a set of options you can choose from, right? Not in Dark Souls. In Dark Souls, you get thrown in there without a guide, you little squirrel. Because you want to walk down this little path. Oh, listen, that's just part of the game, buddy. And you want to know why Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and FromSoft in general is a gigantic IP it is today? Well, it's because of difficulty. It stood out from all the other losers in the crowd to become a testament in time. And probably because it was free on Xbox Live Gold back in 2013. Which was actually my first introduction to it after I got home from 4-H camp. The Souls game's difficulty isn't just an artificial setting you can change, it's built into the game from the ground up. Instead of bullet sponges, you have enemies that have proper health for their type of enemy they are. You have enemies that adapt to your attacks, that feel more alive and real than just normal-ass COD enemies. It's not about how much damage you can do to the enemy, because you have to adapt and use just a little bit of your brain to actually play the game properly. And it's the same for different games like Resident Evil's Professional mode. The enemies are smarter on Professional, items are placed in different places, ammo is more scarce, and it changes the whole feel of the game. Playing on Professional makes the whole game feel like it's a proper survival horror, like you're shaking in your boots like Grace's even at in-game, when in-game is typically supposed to be more action-oriented with Resident Evil games. Oh, but wait. Games being hard doesn't make them fun, you stupid freak! And that's exactly right, you smart person, because having bullet sponges that take 30 minutes to kill isn't fun. In fact, I actively avoid games like that. Destiny, a rest in peace loser. Because it's nothing but artificially raised difficulty. Same as if you die by one hit. Because if it doesn't naturally fit the game, it's not going to feel and flow good. If the difficulty doesn't change how the enemies act, and if it doesn't fundamentally change the flow of the game, then there's no reason to add the option in. Because nobody's going to want to play an artificially harder game that just has bigger numbers over the character's head. Like in Dark Souls, you have to figure out how to properly play the game. You gotta learn the movements of the enemies you're facing. You have to pace yourself properly or you'll just keep dying over and over again, not understanding what you did wrong. You actually have to learn to navigate the world, even if it is difficult, and that's completely subjective as well, considering you can make Dark Souls or Elden Ring extremely easy if you know what to do. Because almost all the enemies have a proper weakness to them. Just look at Let Me Solo Her. Bro took one of the hardest bosses in FromSoft history and made her a cakewalk for him. Because he used just a little bit of his brain instead of brain rotting all day. And took initiative into crafting the difficulty for himself. Yeah, actually, you know what? That's right. You do craft the difficulty of Dark Souls and Elden Ring to what you actually want it to be. If the game is hard, it's because you made it hard. And that's not me saying you gotta use OP stuff, like Rivers of Blood. But you do have to understand how the game works. And even then, it's still subjective. Because technically, Elden Ring is one of the hardest Souls games while still being the more accessible and easiest. Because just look at it like this. The bosses in Elden Ring are actually the hardest bosses in all of the Souls games. You have bosses that learn from your moves, that have dynamic move sets, and relentless attacks. But at the same time, Elden Ring is one of the easiest Souls games to cheese and to craft your own playstyle with. Elden Ring's graces are placed conveniently close together, and a lot of the graces are placed right beside the boss's fog. Because if you go back to old Souls games like Demon Souls, where there's literally just one bonfire per area, or Dark Souls, where you have to walk 10 miles to go to the next bonfire, they really made Elden Rings more accessible while keeping the game one of the hardest games in the series. Hey bro, what about 2K though? Man, fuck 2K. I'm not talking about multiplayer games since they're a whole different type of difficulty spectrum. Listen, if you're bad at multiplayer games, then that's just a straight up skill issue since the skill gap is dependent on player versus player. But co-op games are a different story. If it's a co-op campaign game, then the point still stands, like Dark Souls again. And you know what? I'd go as far to even say the PvP in Dark Souls is pretty fair. That's if you aren't facing someone that's hacking or using a OP build specifically for PvP. So fundamentally, I do think harder games, when implemented right, make games more fun. It's on a difficulty spectrum. Considering Dark Souls and Elden Ring here are extremely well received and massive sellers for FromSoft. And whenever other games try to replicate that, like Lords of the Fallen, which they don't receive as well criticism and support like the Souls games or other games do. Because even though they're trying to mimic the difficulty and strategic game style they have, it just doesn't pan out the same. But like I said, if done right, it does help the game greatly. By changing the enemy movements, placements, difficulty, and the fundamental strategic gameplay, then yes, it does make it more fun. But who knows, maybe you're just a chud who hates difficulty and loves to be handheld through every single game like it's a Ubisoft game. So good going, champ. Thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe if you like this. Check out my other videos and check out ReZero. ReZero is peaking the best anime out there. It's the best show ever. God bless you and thank you.